All right, we're back here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva. The show is also known as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. And catch a lot of our episodes on JApp. That's a new Jewish application where you can check out a lot of different areas of this particular program. Again, this is part of our series where we're going to be on every day, Sunday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 in the morning on the East Coast of the United States. And Friday, there's a bonus show at 2 p.m. Israel time and 7 in the morning in the East Coast of the United States. This afternoon, we have the pleasure of having on a rising star in Jewish community activism here in Israel. She has done work with White City Shabbat in Tel Aviv, Hideni in Jerusalem, and is going to tell us about Kever Rachel's foundation in Hebron on December 15th. Please welcome to the program, Shira Nussdorf. Shira, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ari. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about this particular project. I know this has to do with the Shaloshim of the terrorist attack in Har Nof. That is upon us. It's hard to believe that it's almost a month ago. It feels like yesterday in many different ways. But tell us, what is the purpose of this foundation's work on December 15th?
Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak about it. You know, when we see tragedies like a massacre in a Jewish synagogue, we sometimes feel so powerless. My sister said to me from L.A. when I asked her to pray for us, and she said, well, what's the point of me praying if these rabbis who are, greater men than myself were praying and they were killed in the middle of prayer?
Right.
And it really sometimes makes us feel like, what's the point? Or if such amazing people, the people are calling them the Har Nof Tzadikkim, if such amazing people are killed during prayer, like, why should I bother to pray? And, it's a natural reaction to something that seems so unfair and so unjust. And for me, as a person who went to Neve in Har Nof and who was a student of Rebbetzin Heller, whose son-in-law was attacked in this terrorist, horrible thing that happened almost a month ago, I felt like, what can I do? How can I support my Rebbetzin? How can I support my community? Is there anything like a single girl can do to make a difference? And the amazing thing that I've experienced within the Jewish community is that the answer is always yes. The answer by us is always yes, you can make a difference, and it's a matter of figuring out your personal strengths and connecting to other people who can help guide you in ways that'll be more powerful. So I went to a class that Rebbetzin Heller was speaking at Yocheved Rigler's house in the Old City. She teaches on Monday nights for women at 8:45, and she was sharing her grandson's and her son-in-law's personal story. And it was amazing to hear that these people who were victims of terrorism could see it as a miracle that he wasn't killed, rather than complaining or saying, like, how could God attack my, son-in-law after all that I do, which, and to hear her positivity made me feel like I wish I was so humble or, positive. Even if I had a bad day and somebody cut me off on the train, I probably am like cursing the whole world. So I said to her, it's so amazing that you can have such a positive sight in terms of what's happening. Is there any way that I can share your vision with other girls? Could I bring you maybe to Kever Rachel? Because the parsha coming up, this that just passed was parsha that talked about the death of Rachel. Could I bring you there to speak to girls and inspire them, my friends, whoever? And Rebbetzin Heller told me that the Kever Rachel Foundation was planning on going, and she told me I could contact the head of the organization, who was a friend of hers named Miriam Adani, and see if there was any way that I could get involved. Now, to have like a woman like Rebbetzin Heller share her phone contacts is like a total honor.
Now, before we continue, I just want to let some of the audience know a little bit about the death of Rachel, because that was in last week's Parsha, which is now Vayishlach, and that talks about when Yaakov and his family were entering the land, Rachel died, and she was not buried in the Cave of Machpelah, partly because Yaakov wanted this site to be a place that Jewish people could particularly go to and pray. So can you just talk to us a little bit about the holiness of this place that you guys are going to pray at on December 15th?
Yeah, thank you so much. You're right. It's such a holy place, and unfortunately, it's actually a dangerous place now for Jews to go, which you think about, it's so ironic. Here is this place, Hebron, near Bethlehem, which is, where our holy mother, Rachel was buried, and yet we really have to fear for our lives when we just want to go pray. If I was going to a war zone, I would think that maybe I should be scared. But to go to a tomb of a holy person to pray, we shouldn't be afraid. And the reality of the situation is we are. And Hebron is a place that has always, had a Jewish presence in it, and more as people recognize that they can have an impact with their prayers, people are going. So in this week's Parsha, we see the actual land where our forefathers were thousands of years ago, and it's amazing that we can still go there today and visit, and it really makes us feel connected to the promise of Israel as a homeland for Jewish people. And if people would say, who are you to go to Israel? It's not your land. You're born in New York, Shira. I could turn to the Torah and say, well, actually, if you look at the Torah, which is written way before my existence, this is a Jewish holy site, and I want to go and honor my mother, Rachel.
Very, very well said. Again, this is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio. The show is also simulcasted as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of praying at a place of a righteous person, because it's a big part of Judaism, and I think there's some confusion on it, but the Torah does speak about clinging to the Tzadikkim, but people don't actually pray to them. But the idea is that the merit of standing at the place where the tzaddik or tzaddikus is buried, it actually creates a channel where the prayers are heard. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that concept?
You're absolutely right about that, Ari, and that is something that many people have to figure out how to do in a kosher way. I remember when I first started to becoming more observant, I didn't know exactly the terminology in terms of formatting my prayers in a way that wasn't, as you say, like praying to the tzaddik or the important person. And it's a really important distinction within our tradition to do. It's not that I would go to the tomb of Rachel and say, Rachel, please help me out. I need this, that, and the third, because Rachel isn't God. And it's praying by the sight of this holy person and praying to God and saying, look, God, I'm the daughter of this person, and in her merit, in everything that she's done, please hear my prayers. And it's that we should align ourselves next to the righteous deeds of such amazing people. And, we don't believe in the Jewish religion in deifying a person and saying that one individual person is somebody that to be used as an operator to God. Some religions may do that. By us, we recognize that these people that we admire are people who had enough faith in God to nullify their own ego or their own desires and really look at the better wishes of the klal, how this would serve the whole of Am Yisrael in the future. And so when we can see a person like Rachel or Jacob or Isaac, we see that these were real people who only lived their lives with the thought that they would have a nation in the future, and what their actions could do to teach us now what our reactions should be.
Now, that all is very important, is regarding praying, but we were talking about the word in Hebrew, emunah, faith. When you see something as terrible as what happened to Har Nof, and you're talking about how righteous the people were, the common question comes up throughout Jewish history, and still it's prevalent nowadays. Why do these bad things happen to these good people? Because these people were the top of the top, and a lot of people consider them these hidden tzaddikim and all these great things, and they were murdered while they were praying. So when you see that, logically, how do you say, how is there a God when these bad things are happening to these good people?
It's such a great question. I'll tell you what Rebbetzin Heller said. She talked about the three different ways in which we could merit the Messiah coming. And since this seems to be something that's important to you, I'll give over what she said, if that's okay.
Sure.
She said there's three ways in which the Jewish people could merit bringing Messiah. Number one, in the merit of a tzaddik, as you said. And she said it's important to know that all these amazing good deeds of all the tzaddikim and the righteous people that we've had over the centuries, be it Rachel, be it the Lubavitcher Rebbe, be it the Baal Shem Tov, Rav Kook, whoever you as a person was connected to as a rabbi, those merits and those deeds don't go away just because that person dies. What could happen is that those merits and those deeds could do is inspire you as a person to have chesed, which is another way in which Israel can merit the bringing of the Messiah. If Israel realizes that only God can bring about actual change and not rely on man, then we can do real tshuva and make real change in terms of how we see ourselves and our actions. So doing tshuva or coming to a realization that we need to change and make positive choices is another way that people can merit the coming of the Messiah. That people can say, you know what, the things that I do matter, and I need to change myself in order to change the world. So if people do tshuva and look at their own actions, it's another way that we can bring the Messiah. And the third way, if we've made great changes within ourselves, and we see that now these tzaddikim have left us, we could realize that there's a void and that we need to fill that. So, for example, Rebbetzin Heller talked about Henny Maklis, who is by any means a current-day tzedekis. Everybody in Jerusalem knows that if they're stuck on a Shabbat meal, they could go to the Maklis house, and it's an open door. And Henny Maklis, unfortunately has been ill for quite some time, and Jews all over the world have been davening and praying for her. And what Rebbetzin Heller said was when bad things happen to good people, like Henny Maklis falling sick, it means that now when I'm thinking about my Shabbos table and somebody calls me up last minute and says, do you have room for two? Actually make it 5. Then because something bad happened to a good person, instead of saying don't you make plans? You know how inconsiderate it is for you? I only have a table of such and such. I might think, you know what? I need to make the difference. I need to be even more of a righteous person because something's happening to our righteous people that creates a need for me to do it. And what Rebbetzin Heller said was that, these Har Nof Tzadikkim that we lost were the same great rabbis they were 2 days before, except that maybe people hadn't heard of them. They were holy men. And after they died, we realized that we did have such great leaders within our generation, and the amount of prayers and tefillos that came from people davening for the safety of the people who were in the hospital, or realizing that we're really at a threat here in Israel, that we have to protect ourselves, inspires us to become the good people that we're so upset something bad happened to.
Again, we're speaking with Shira Nussdorf here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio. Arut Sheva, and the show is simulcasted as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. A lot of people will look at the terrorist attack and talk about the world seems chaotic. It seems that there is not an order to things, that things are random because these terrorists came in, they could have walked into the shul and killed people that could have gone somewhere else. And that's a very scary part about terrorism, that it seems random. But is there something we can learn that things aren't random, that there's a reason for everything, even with this terrible terrorist incident that happened in Har Nof?
Last night I went to go see Rebbetzin Yemima Mizrahi speak, and she's an amazing, amazing positive force for women. And one of the things that she spoke about is a conversation that she had with one of the widows, Rabbi Goldstein's wife. And she spoke about the fact that they had lost a daughter, like a 13-year-old daughter, several years ago. And, she said the natural reaction for anybody is to look at that and say, haven't these people had enough? Like, all these terrible things have happened. And she said that because the rabbi had been so instrumental in helping them get over the grief that happened when this girl fell ill and never woke up, that now when she has to mourn his loss, she hears his words over and over again, comforting her and giving her the strength. So she looked at it like it wasn't random, that she was more prepared for this type of trial and tribulation because of what happened to her years ago, and that it wasn't random, that she was in a position where she could help the nation repair. And the same thing really goes with Rebbetzin Heller. I mean, we should never know such tragedy in our lives. But quite honestly, the fact that it happened to a person, a family member of such an important figure for us as Jewish people today means she's able to speak to the press, or she's able to lead women in a trip to Kever Rachel. And because it's her, it's not so random. And if those people who are actually directly affected by the murder and the terrorism can see it as not being random, but that as a responsibility they have to help guide us into how to have an appropriate reaction to grief, then we can see it's not a random chaotic thing. It's a Jewish response to understanding that bad things do happen to good people, but if we train ourselves to look at everything with an eye and tov and a good eye, we can put sense into the world and try and create a reaction that puts order into what appears to be chaos.
Now, I want to go back to this tremendous thing that you're involved with, December 15th, the Kever Rachel, praying. That's the Shaloshim. That's the 38 morning period that's been since the terrorist attack, about how you got this started, because you were saying you wanted to do something to help. And I think people forget how powerful every individual person is, because they're talked about in the Torah. Every person is written by the Torah. So can you just talk a bit about the power of an individual person?
Right. So an individual person by us is not ever an individual. One of the things that was most appealing to me in terms of my growing observance was understand that in Jewish thought, we are always connected to the klal, that we have a neshama, a soul, that is connected to every brother and sister that we have together. So if I choose to do something positive, like, ask Rebbetzin Heller if I can invite her to Kever Rachel, and she connects me to Miriam Adani, and Miriam Adani is already the head of the Kever Rachel Foundation, and I went to Neve and have friends who went to Neve, or I went to Midrash Rachel, or any kind of list serve I may even have on Facebook, be it Secret Tel Aviv, Secret Jerusalem. It means that my actions could influence others. If I take it upon myself to say, who am I to pray, and I decide to make that choice, then maybe it could inspire other people to pray and be connected in any way that's possible, whether it be prayer or making a donation, or spreading a Facebook message or an email. All that are ways that individuals can make a difference. And even it could affect me in terms of my choices, in terms of how I handle frustration that I may have in a smaller scale. I might be upset that somebody cut me off on the bus, and my natural reaction is to yell or chas v'shalom, God forbid, say something racist, And what the Torah does is make me stop and think, is that befitting of a Bas Yisrael? Is that befitting of a daughter of Israel? Is it going to look bad and reflect badly upon who I am as a Jewish woman? And there's been plenty of cases in the media where a simple person made an inappropriate comment and somebody turned around and said, look at the Jews. So for sure, by us, every single individual's action makes a difference. And we really have to think, how can we respond in a way that is going to be something that we're proud of later?
And in regards to this prayer group, prayer event, December 15th, I know you spoke to a women's group on Saturday night. You spoke to about 600 people. What was that like for you personally? Because public speaking is the number one fear, they say, according to surveys among people, and that's even if it's 10, 15, 20 people, and you spoke to 600 people. So tell us what that was like for you personally.
I got to say, I had a prep for that at the Hanani lunch meal that Jerry organized in Nachon, where I talked about Rebbetzin Young Rice and connected her to Mama Rachel, and feeling like that the energy that I could put out as a person could be well received. So when I spent time on Shabbat centering myself and praying for clarity and praying that my voice could be used as a way of helping others hear truth, then the opportunity when it came, when Yemima Mizrahi asked everyone in the audience, is there anybody that has a miracle story they want to share? And from the very, very back of 600 plus people, she saw my little hand go up. I raced forward and was able to do it with confidence, because when you pray for something, then you can hope to get it. And if you believe enough in Hashem, in God, then you should believe enough in yourself to think that maybe if you align your wishes with His wishes, then you could have your greatest wishes granted to you. And Yemima Mizrahi talked last night about Hanukkah coming up, and about what's one thing that every single woman could do while they're lighting candles, and it's that we should be positive. And she said, women have a tendency to get upset when things happen and take things personally. And she said, for 8 days, could you really put your energy into focusing on the miracles and thinking that maybe your prayers could be heard, and opening your eyes to the miracles that could befall you if you really had faith in yourself and emunah in Hashem? And that's something that I'd like to challenge everyone to. There's so many things that you could do. You could, like I said, you could give a donation to the Kever Rachel Foundation. You could come and pray with us, leaving Har Nof from the day at 3 o'clock, or you could show up at 4 o'clock at Kever Rachel. You could pray in your own house. Or when Hanukkah comes, you could really try for 8 days not to complain, to really focus on the positive and seeing that we are a nation that has depended on the mercy and the miracles of God. And that if we change our individual actions and our eyes to see what we as individuals can do, there's no telling what we can accomplish.
Okay, that concludes part one of my interview with Shira Nussdorf here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva. We'll take a quick break and have part two after this.